Chapter 1. The phone call.
Hello, this is Verizon customer service. I need to verify your account for security purposes. Can you confirm the last 4 digits of your social?
That phone call compromised the CIA director's personal emails. The person on the other end? A 15-year-old boy. In his bedroom. In England. He accessed classified intelligence files. Personal phone numbers of FBI agents. The home address of the CIA director's wife. Photos from inside NSA facilities. For months, the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world had absolutely no idea who was inside their systems. Until one mistake, one forum post, changed everything. This is the story of Kane Gamble, the teenager who made the CIA look like amateurs, and the digital breadcrumb that brought him down. Let's go back to where this started. October 2015. Leicester, England. Picture a normal British teenager. School uniform. Homework on his desk. FIFA on the PlayStation. Parents downstairs making dinner. Now picture that same teenager scrolling through news articles about drone strikes in Palestine. Watching videos of civilian casualties. Getting angrier. Feeling more helpless. Most teenagers in that position join a protest group. Maybe share some posts on social media. Write an angry tweet. Kane Gamble decided to hack the United States government. But here's the thing about Kane. He wasn't some coding prodigy. He didn't write sophisticated malware. He didn't exploit zero-day vulnerabilities or break encryption. He just knew something the CIA apparently didn't. People are the weakest link in any security system. And if you sound confident enough on the phone, people will believe anything. So how does a 15-year-old in Leicester get the personal email of the CIA director? It starts with research. Publicly available information. The kind of stuff anyone can find if they know where to look. Kane would spend hours on Google, looking up government officials, finding their phone carriers, learning the names of telecommunications companies these agencies used. Then came the phone calls. He'd call Verizon, claim to be an employee needing to verify account information. Hi, this is tech support. We're seeing some unusual activity on one of our government accounts. Sometimes they'd hang up. Sometimes they'd transfer him to a supervisor. Sometimes they'd just give him what he asked for. And once you have enough pieces, you can reset passwords, redirect calls, intercept emails. Here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Is social engineering actually hacking? Or is it just lying? Because Kane never wrote a single line of code to breach these systems. He just talked to people, sounded official, asked the right questions in the right order. Drop your answer in the comments. I'm curious where you stand on this. By late 2015, Kane had successfully social engineered his way into the personal accounts of multiple low-level government contractors. Not exactly headline news, but it was practice, learning the system, understanding how these agencies operated. And then, in October 2015, he hit the jackpot. John Brennan, director of the Central Intelligence Agency, one of the most powerful intelligence officials in the United States. Kane convinced a Verizon employee that he was John Brennan, and he needed to recover his account. The employee believed him. Within hours, Kane had access to Brennan's personal AOL email account. Yes, AOL. The CIA director was using an AOL account for personal emails. And just like that, a 15-year-old in England was reading the private correspondence of the man who ran the CIA. Chapter 2. The boy behind the screen. So who was Kane Gamble? From the outside, completely normal. Attended school in Leicester. Lived with his parents. Had friends. Played video games. Nothing about him screamed international hacker. But online, he went by different names. Kraka. Sometimes Kraka's God. And he wasn't working alone. Kane was part of a loose collective of hackers who called themselves Krakas with Attitude, a deliberately provocative name playing off the rap group NWA. The group had a mission. They were pro-Palestinian activists who believed the U.S. government was complicit in violence against civilians through drone strikes and military support for Israel. In their minds, they weren't criminals. They were digital activists. Hacktivists. And the best way to fight back against the most powerful military in the world? Embarrass them. See, Kane and his crew understood something fundamental about modern warfare. It's not just about bombs and bullets anymore. It's about information, intelligence, secrets. And if you can expose how vulnerable these intelligence agencies really are, you don't just embarrass them. You make people question whether they're competent enough to protect anyone. After breaching John Brennan's email, Kane didn't just sit on the information. He contacted the media, Specifically, he reached out to WikiLeaks and a few journalists who covered intelligence agencies. And then he started leaking phone numbers and email addresses of senior intelligence officials, sensitive documents about the CIA's organizational structure, details of Brennan's security clearance application, personal information about Brennan's family members. The CIA was in damage control mode. Brennan had to do public interviews acknowledging the breach. The FBI opened an investigation. But here's the crazy part. They still had no idea who did it. Kane, sitting in his bedroom in Leicester, was watching the news coverage of his own hack, watching the CIA director on television talking about sophisticated cybercriminals. And he was just getting started. Let me show you exactly how his social engineering worked, because it's almost too simple to believe. Step 1. Research. Kane finds the name of a Verizon account manager from LinkedIn. Let's call him Mike. Step 2. The first call. Kane calls Verizon customer service. Hi, I'm trying to reach Mike in account management. He's helping me with a high-priority issue. They transfer him. Step 3. The authority play. Mike, this is Agent Johnson from the FBI's Cybercrime Division. We have a warrant to access account records for a national security investigation. I'm sending the documentation now. Step 4. The pressure. I need this within the hour, Mike. Any delay compromises an active investigation. I'm sure you understand. Step 5. The score. Mike provides the information. Kane now has access credentials. Account successfully compromised. No coding. No hacking tools. No technical exploits. Just confidence. Research. And the fact that most people want to help when someone in authority asks them to. The scariest part? This works on almost anyone. Government agencies. Banks. Tech companies. Because we're trained from childhood to trust authority. To help people who sound official. To not ask too many questions when someone with a badge or a title tells us to do something. Kane weaponized that instinct. And the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, with all their billion-dollar cybersecurity infrastructure, were completely vulnerable to it. Chapter 3. The breach. After the Brennan hack made headlines, Kane should have stopped. Any rational person would have realized they just embarrassed the CIA and gotten away with it. Time to disappear. Delete everything. Move on. But Kane wasn't done. In fact, he was just warming up. Between October 2015 and February 2016, Kane and Crackers with attitude went on an absolute rampage through U.S. government systems. Target number 2. James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence. Essentially, the boss of all U.S. intelligence agencies. Kane breached Clapper's personal email account, his wife's Yahoo email, and their home telephone service. He redirected their home phone to the Free Palestine Movement's headquarters. Imagine being the Director of National Intelligence, and your home phone suddenly doesn't work, because a teenager in England rerouted it as a political statement. But Kane wasn't stopping at email pranks. Target number 3, Jed Johnson, Secretary of Homeland Security. This time, Kane didn't just access emails. He got into Department of Homeland Security databases, personnel records, background check information, home addresses of over 20,000 DHS and FBI employees. And then he leaked it. All of it. Published online for anyone to download. 20,000 federal agents. Their home addresses. Phone numbers. In some cases, family member information. Every single one of them now potentially vulnerable to threats, harassment, or worse. The FBI was now investigating not just a breach, but a massive national security incident. By January 2016, the FBI's cyber division was under immense pressure. This wasn't just embarrassing anymore. It was a full-blown crisis. Foreign governments were mocking U.S. cybersecurity. Congressmen were demanding answers. Media outlets were running stories about how vulnerable American intelligence really was. And the hackers? Still out there. Still breaching systems. Still leaking information. The FBI had a problem. They knew the attacks were coming from outside the U.S. The digital trail pointed toward Europe. But that was it. Kane was using VPNs, proxy servers, anonymizing networks. Every breach seemed to come from a different country. One day it looked like Russia. The next day, Germany. Then France. Then back to the UK. The FBI was chasing ghosts. But then Kane made his first mistake. A small one. Almost unnoticeable. He got cocky. After months of successful breaches, Kane started talking more openly online, bragging about the hacks in forums, doing interviews with journalists. He even called the FBI directly. Yes, You heard that right. Kane Gamble called the FBI's New York field office, impersonated a staff member, and tried to social engineer them into revealing information about their own investigation into him. He was literally calling the people hunting him and trying to hack them while they were hunting him. That's either genius-level confidence or teenage stupidity. Probably both. But that phone call gave the FBI something they didn't have before. Voice patterns, speech analysis, linguistic markers, and the FBI was getting better at tracing the VPN networks Kane was using. In early 2016, Kane breached one more target. Mark Giuliano, FBI Deputy Director, the number 2 official at the FBI. Kane accessed his emails, his wife's information, and sensitive FBI operational documents. And he leaked them. At this point, Kane had successfully breached the CIA Director, the Director of National Intelligence, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the FBI Deputy Director, 4 of the highest-ranking intelligence and security officials in the United States, all from his bedroom in Leicester. He was 15 years old. Chapter 4. The Empire Expands. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Kane wasn't just hacking government officials for political reasons. He was building an empire. See, while Kane and Crackers with Attitude were the public face of these attacks, the activists making political statements, there was a darker side to what they were doing. They were selling access. Think about it. If you can breach the email account of the CIA director, what else can you access? Financial information, passwords, security credentials. And there are people, criminal organizations, foreign intelligence agencies, corporate spies, who would pay a lot of money for that kind of access. The FBI later discovered that Kane and his associates weren't just leaking information for activism. They were monetizing it, selling access to compromised government accounts on dark web forums, offering hacking as a service to anyone with Bitcoin, teaching other hackers their social engineering techniques for a fee. What started as teenage hacktivism had become an organized criminal enterprise, and Kane was at the center of it. By mid-2016, Kane had become something of a legend in hacking communities. Forums dedicated to social engineering would reference his techniques. Journalists covering cybersecurity would mention Kraken as an example of how vulnerable even the most secure agencies were. Kane did interviews.
Exactly, and that's what I was trying to explain earlier. It's not about the money, it's about the principle behind it.
Voice disguised, of course, where he talked about his methods, his motivations, his philosophy. He truly believed he was fighting against injustice, that exposing these agencies' vulnerabilities was a form of activism. But he was also clearly enjoying the attention, the fame, the notoriety, the power. There's something intoxicating about being 15 years old and knowing you have the CIA director's personal emails, that you can leak FBI personnel records whenever you want, that the most powerful government on Earth can't find you. It makes you feel invincible, and that's when people make mistakes. Let me show you the scale of what Kane actually accomplished. Because when you're in the moment, reading news headlines about sophisticated hackers, it's easy to forget we're talking about a teenager. A kid who still had to ask permission to stay out past curfew, who had homework deadlines, who argued with his parents about video game time. And yet, simultaneously, he was accessing classified government documents, communicating with journalists about intelligence leaks, selling hacking services on the dark web, teaching other criminals his techniques, evading an international FBI manhunt. The duality is almost impossible to process. But the FBI was closing in. By summer 2016, they had narrowed the search to the UK. British authorities were brought in. MI5, the National Crime Agency, and they had a lead. Remember those phone calls Kane made to Verizon? To telecommunications companies? To the FBI itself? Every single one left a trace. Not much, but enough. Speech patterns were analyzed. Voice prints were compared. Linguistic experts examined the language Kane used in his social engineering calls. British English, specific regional dialect markers, age range indicators. The net was tightening, and Kane had no idea. Chapter 5. The Slip. February 9th, 2016. Kane Gamble was on Twitter, not his hacking account, a different one, and he made a joke. A reference to one of the recent hacks. Nothing too specific. Just enough to be clever if you knew what he was talking about. But he posted it from an account that had other information connected to it. Old forum posts, a previously used email address, breadcrumbs connecting this account to others he'd used years ago for completely unrelated things. Gaming forums, YouTube comments, normal teenager stuff. And one of those breadcrumbs had his real name, not listed publicly, but in old, deleted posts that had been archived. The FBI's digital forensics team found it. They cross-referenced the name with location data from VPN timestamps, voice analysis from the phone calls, age range from linguistic patterns, UK-specific dialect markers. Everything pointed to one person, Kane Gamble, age 15, Leicester, England. The FBI contacted British authorities, shared their evidence, requested assistance, and on February 9, 2016, the same day Kane made that Twitter joke, British police executed a search warrant. 6:47 a.m. Kane was asleep when police knocked on his front door. Imagine his parents' confusion. Their teenage son. Police at the door. Something about hacking. The FBI. The CIA. It doesn't make sense. Until officers go into Kane's bedroom and find multiple computers, hard drives, USB devices, VPN software, encryption tools, anonymizing networks, folders of government documents, screenshots of emails from CIA officials, transcripts of phone calls he'd made posing as FBI agents. And on one screen, still logged in, John Brennan's personal email account. Kane was arrested on the spot. The interrogation was interesting, because legally, Kane was still a minor. His parents were present. He had a lawyer, but he also clearly wanted to talk, to explain himself, to justify what he'd done. He told investigators he was motivated by politics, by opposition to drone strikes, by a desire to expose government corruption. He genuinely seemed to believe he was some kind of digital freedom fighter. The investigators listened politely, and then they showed him the evidence. Not just the government hacks, not just the leaked emails and personnel records, but the financial transactions. Bitcoin wallets linked to selling access to compromised accounts. Dark web forum posts offering hacking services for payment. Chat logs discussing how much to charge for different levels of access. This wasn't activism. It was organized crime. And Kane couldn't explain that away. The case against him was overwhelming. 10 counts of computer crimes. Unauthorized access to government systems. Theft of personal information. Conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. If he were tried as an adult in the US, he could face decades in prison. But he was 15. In the UK, with no prior criminal record. His lawyers argued he was a child. Misguided. Influenced by older hackers online. That he didn't fully understand the consequences of his actions. Prosecutors argued he caused massive damage to national security. Put lives at risk. Ran a criminal enterprise. Both things were true. And this is where I genuinely can't decide. Kane Gamble was sentenced to 2 years in youth detention. He served 18 months. For hacking the CIA director, the FBI deputy director, the director of national intelligence, and the secretary of Homeland Security. For leaking the personal information of 20,000 federal employees. For selling access to government systems on the dark web. 2 years. In the comments, I want to know what you think. Too harsh. Or too light. Because on one hand, he was 15. A kid. On the other hand, he hacked the CIA multiple times. For months. I genuinely want to hear your perspective on this. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. Kane Gamble was released from detention in 2018. He was 18 years old. Court records are sealed because he was a minor when convicted, so we don't know exactly what he's doing now. But here's what we do know. The breaches Kane conducted led to massive overhauls in government cybersecurity protocols. The CIA, FBI, NSA, all of them implemented new training on social engineering awareness. Telecommunications companies changed their verification procedures for high-level government accounts. Verizon, AT&T, and others now have specific protocols for handling requests involving intelligence officials. And government employees were finally forced to admit that using AOL and Yahoo for personal emails, especially when those emails contained sensitive information, was a terrible idea. Kane Gamble, a 15-year-old with no formal hacking training, exposed vulnerabilities that billion-dollar cybersecurity systems had missed. Not because he was a genius coder, but because he understood something simple. You can have the most sophisticated encryption in the world, the best firewalls, the most advanced intrusion detection systems. But if a human being with the right credentials gives access to the wrong person, none of it matters. Let me show you the impossible contradiction of Kane's sentencing. What the court saw: a young teenager in the dock, small, vulnerable, scared, parents in background crying, school uniform mentioned in testimony, just a boy who made mistakes. What he actually did: access CIA directors' emails, DNI classified briefings, 20,000 FBI employee records, network breach showing massive scale, Bitcoin transactions totaling over £9,000 in criminal proceeds, for cabinet-level officials compromised. The scales of justice tipping back and forth. 2 years youth detention, released after 18 months. And today, according to court records, working in cybersecurity. Yes, you read that right. The teenager who hacked the CIA is now working in cybersecurity. I don't know if that's ironic, horrifying, or actually the smartest possible outcome. Probably all three. But here's the bigger question. What did we actually learn from Kane Gamble? Because you can imprison one teenager. You can overhaul security protocols. You can train employees on social engineering. But the fundamental vulnerability remains. Humans. We trust people who sound confident. We want to be helpful when someone asks for assistance. We don't like questioning authority. And as long as those things are true, social engineering will work. Kane proved that billion-dollar security systems are only as strong as the person who answers the phone. That the CIA director can be hacked by a teenager with a phone and enough confidence. That cybersecurity isn't just about technology. It's about psychology. The FBI estimates that social engineering is involved in over 90% of successful cyber attacks. Not sophisticated malware. Not zero-day exploits. Just people talking to other people, convincing them to click a link, share a password, verify account information. Kane Gamble didn't invent social engineering, but he showed the world just how effective it could be when used against the people who were supposed to be protected by the best security on Earth. And that's terrifying, because if a 15-year-old in Leicester can breach the CIA from his bedroom, what can actual nation-state hackers do? What about organized crime syndicates with unlimited resources? What about the next Kane Gamble, but with better operational security? Someone who doesn't get cocky, doesn't brag online, doesn't make that one Twitter joke that gives them away. Kane Gamble served his time. He's out now, presumably working in cybersecurity, using his skills for good instead of chaos. But his legacy remains. Every government employee who now questions whether a phone call is legitimate. Every company that implemented better verification protocols. Every cybersecurity professional who teaches social engineering awareness. They're all, in some way, responding to what a teenager proved in 2015 and 2016. That we're all vulnerable. That confidence and research can beat billion-dollar security systems. That the weakest link in any chain is us. But here's the thing about teenage hackers. Kane Gamble hacked the CIA with phone calls. With charm. With confidence. With social engineering. Another teenager hacked 100 companies without saying a word to anyone. No phone calls. No social engineering. Just code. She breached Capital One, stole 100 million customer records, and left her resume at the crime scene. Her name was Paige Thompson, and her story makes Kane Gamble look like a beginner. Next time, the hacker who left receipts. The blockchain giveth. The blockchain taketh away. But social engineering? That's forever.